Have you noticed how certain men always seem to come back as if something is pulling them back, even after an intimate moment that seemed like the definite end? What if I told you there's a silent, almost invisible yet profoundly powerful attitude that makes them return? And what if this has nothing to do with sweet words or how you act in bed, but with something much deeper and more transcendent? Carl Jung, one of the great pioneers of 20th century psychology, might say that the secret lies in something unseen: how you deal with your own essence after intimacy. He believed there is a force within us, something unconscious, that guides our actions, our desires, and above all, our deepest connections. And it is in that invisible dimension where the true power of attraction resides, a power that, when awakened consciously, is almost impossible to ignore. Jung dedicated much of his life to understanding the mysteries of the human soul and its most profound connections. For him, intimacy between two people was not just a physical act, but a genuine meeting of unconscious minds. Every gesture, every glance, every silence carries symbols and meanings far beyond what we can consciously grasp. When you share an intimate moment with someone, you're not just sharing physical space, you're opening the doors to your deepest unconscious. And that is where everything truly begins. If after intimacy you get lost in anxiety, in the desperate need for control, in consuming insecurity, the other person feels it. Even if they don't understand it rationally, their unconscious picks up on that energy of lack and desperation. But if instead you turn inward, embrace your emotions with compassion, listen to yourself, and respect yourself deeply, something extraordinary shifts. You become a clear mirror in which the other can see what he himself is unable to see inside. And that, according to Jung, is what makes a connection truly unforgettable. There is something very important that Jung called the process of individuation. It's the sacred path through which a person becomes who they are truly meant to be. And that process inevitably passes through the way you handle your most intimate relationships. Do you give yourself to someone and then completely lose yourself, waiting for messages, confirmations, constant proofs of love? You're giving away your individuality, your most authentic personal power. But when you choose to remain silent, not as a form of punishment or manipulation, but as a way of returning to yourself, of listening deeply, of perceiving how you really feel, you send a silent yet incredibly powerful message: I am whole, even without you. This moves the other's unconscious deeply, because most people don't know how to be whole in solitude. And when they meet someone who does, who has developed that capacity, they feel an inexplicable magnetic pull. You're not projecting lack, you're projecting pure magnetism. It's as if your silence says more than 1,000 desperate words, as if your absence holds more real presence than many empty presences out there. In Jung's deep studies on the animus and anima, the masculine and feminine aspects within each person, he shows how we seek in others what we lack within. A man, for example, often projects his anima onto a woman, that is, the sensitive, intuitive, emotional side. He doesn't know how to deal with himself because he was conditioned from childhood to suppress those qualities. When you appear centered, self-aware, not depending on his external validation to feel secure and complete, you make him, without even understanding why, feel that he needs to come back. Because next to you, he gains access to a part of himself that he cannot reach or explore on his own. It's as if your presence awakens in him a reunion with something long asleep. And that creates an emotional memory that is strong and unforgettable. It's not your body he wants to see again. It's the elevated emotional state he feels when he's near you, and that state comes directly from how you position yourself after intimacy. Now let's think about something simple yet revolutionary. When a man leaves after a moment of closeness and finds, on the other side, a woman who doesn't chase after him, who doesn't demand explanations, who doesn't expect instant answers, but who also doesn't shut down emotionally, something extraordinary begins to unfold within him. He feels an emptiness, a silence, but it's not a cold or sharp silence. It's a silence full of presence, charged with dignity, what Jung called the shadow. The shadow is everything we deny within ourselves. When he starts to feel nostalgia, insecurity, or regret, he is facing that personal shadow head-on. Your absence, which is not a lack of you, but rather the full presence of who you truly are, becomes an unrelenting mirror. He begins to ask himself, why do I feel this deep longing? What was so unique and special about her? And then he returns, not because you asked, not because you insisted, but because something deep within him was touched, something essential. And that something is only awakened when you do this. You return to yourself with love and respect. Jung used to say that every deep relationship is an opportunity for healing, and that only what is faced with courage can truly be healed. When you face your solitude, your waiting, your natural anxiety, and choose not to run from them but to embrace them with compassion, you grow exponentially. You become someone who needs no one to feel whole and complete. And that personal integrity is what makes men come back, not out of emotional dependence, but from a genuine desire to be close to something real and authentic. Because deep down, all of us are desperately searching for what is real, and nothing is more real than a person who chooses to stay true to themselves. So, if you want to know what to do after intimacy, the answer is simple and immensely powerful. Return to yourself. Care for your body with love, your heart with patience, your soul with reverence. Practice conscious silence. Observe without judgment, feel without resistance, because in that sacred inner movement lies your true feminine power. And it is that authentic power that causes him to return. Not because you pulled him back through manipulation, but because he never truly wanted to leave. His soul recognizes the home it found in your centered presence. Most men don't fully understand what they feel in such moments. They are taught from an early age not to cry, to always be strong, to never show weakness. The result is an entire generation of adults fleeing from their own emotions as if they were dangerous enemies. Carl Jung spoke extensively about this emotional flight. He said that everything we reject in ourselves doesn't magically disappear. It hides deep within, and that hiding place is called the unconscious. The silence of a woman who doesn't beg, who doesn't desperately chase, who doesn't humiliate herself, but who also doesn't shut down her heart, becomes a revealing mirror. A mirror that forces him to face everything he spent his life trying to ignore or suppress. And that's why many come back. Eventually, it's not because of the body, it's because of the soul. Because next to a centered woman, he finally feels something the rest of the world can't offer. Inner peace and authenticity. Make no mistake, this is not about manipulation. Jung never endorsed tricks to control others. Quite the opposite. He deeply believed that true transformation only happens when one confronts oneself with brutal honesty. So when we talk about doing something that makes a man come back, we're not talking about emotional games or cheap psychological tactics. We're talking about an internal posture, a conscious choice of dignity. When you choose not to lose yourself after intimacy, when you decide not to abandon yourself, you send a silent yet incredibly powerful message. I belong fully to myself. And the most beautiful part is that by doing so, you awaken in the other person the desire to also belong to themselves. Because deep down, we're all tired of relationships that drain us and leave us emotionally exhausted. We all want someone who helps us remember who we truly are. Someone who, even in silence, says, I see you, I respect you, I value you. And that kind of deep connection can't be found just anywhere. Jung said that relationships are projection fields, where we project our deepest idealizations, our unresolved traumas, our hopes, and our most primitive fears. In moments of intimacy, those projections intensify dramatically. It's as if, for a few sacred minutes, all veils fall, and what was unconscious surfaces completely. That's why what happens after that moment is so critically important. It's where everything is revealed, now without masks. If you act with desperation, chase after immediate responses, or frantically seek confirmation, he will feel it viscerally. He doesn't need to say anything, he just senses it as pure neediness. But when he sees you as a whole, complete being, rooted in your own essence, That image is what truly transforms. That's the image that remains engraved, even when the body is no longer there. Let's imagine a real scenario. After a deep, intimate encounter, he disappears. No message, no call, no contact. What to do in such a painful situation? Most people desperately search for answers, revisiting every recent moment, analyzing every tiny detail, obsessively asking what went wrong. But what if the real healing move is the opposite? What if, instead of chasing in anxiety, you simply embraced yourself with love? What if, instead of seeking answers outside, you turned your gaze inward, to your sacred self? Carl Jung spoke of the importance of integrating the shadow. In other words, embracing what hurts us instead of denying or violently rejecting it. By doing this consciously, you create an energetic field of emotional maturity that is incredibly rare and deeply attractive. Because at his core, every mature man longs for a woman who is a safe harbor. Not a place to hide from life, but a place to meet himself. And to be that harbor of peace, you must be firmly anchored in yourself, in your own essence. That attitude is absolutely revolutionary, especially for older men who carry decades of relationship patterns marked by constant demands, emotional exhaustion, and paralyzing fears. When a man in his 50s or 60s meets a woman who doesn't chase him desperately, but also doesn't shut down emotionally, he feels something entirely different, a quiet kind of respect, a presence that welcomes without binding, that loves without losing itself. Jung deeply believed that this kind of feminine energy was transformative for the masculine soul. He saw conscious relationships as opportunities for profound healing, but only when both people are genuinely willing to grow and evolve. So when you gather yourself with unconditional love, when you nurture your inner life, your sacred rituals, your conscious silence, you are offering a subtle but powerful invitation, an invitation to grow, to mature emotionally, to reconnect with what is truly essential in life. And that invitation, even without spoken words, resonates deeply within him. And one day, when he's truly ready to receive it, he comes back, not because you insisted, but because you became someone genuinely unforgettable. What most men fear more than abandonment is feeling completely vulnerable. Jung said the fear of knowing oneself is the greatest of all human fears, because to truly know yourself demands extraordinary courage. So when you appear in someone's life with an abundance of courage, to face yourself, to love yourself unconditionally, to respect yourself even after the deepest intimacy, you become a living mirror of that kind of inner strength. And that authentic strength is magnetic in a way that goes far beyond the physical. And that's why I repeat with emphasis, this is not about conquering, persuading with arguments, or seducing with techniques. It's simply about being who you truly are, with lightness and absolute truth, being a sacred space where another soul can rest, but also be challenged to grow. And that is the real alchemy of love, according to Jung, transforming intimacy into deep self-knowledge. And that only happens when you consciously choose to return to yourself after intimacy. Because in that simple yet powerful gesture lies the ancient secret that makes men come back, always, sooner or later. What many men perhaps don't know, or have never taken the time to deeply reflect on, is that returning to someone after a truly intimate moment isn't just a mental decision. Often it's an inner need, something stronger than the ego, more powerful than pride. Jung said the human psyche is constantly seeking balance and harmony. When a man experiences something that shakes him out of the superficial and puts him face to face with something truly real, that experience is imprinted in his unconscious, like a permanent mark. Even if he tries to move on, to forget deliberately, to distract himself with others or the routine of daily life, that deep emotional imprint does not fade easily, because it wasn't just a casual encounter, it was a genuine meeting with his own soul through the conscious presence of another person, and that is why he comes back. Eventually, sometimes in weeks, sometimes in months, but he returns, inevitably, but because his unconscious instinctively recognizes where truth once existed, and truth has that magnetic power to call back everything that was only temporarily lost. But that return only happens. And here lies the most important and delicate point: when you do not interfere with the natural process. Jung said that true growth requires sacred time, contemplative silence, and yes, transformative pain. He must feel that aching nostalgia in his soul in order to truly recognize the value of what you shared. If you try to rush this natural process, demanding explanations, sending desperate messages, trying to convince him with rational arguments, you interrupt the path of his inner evolution. You give him answers before he has even asked the right questions within himself, and that significantly weakens the transformative power of what was experienced. On the other hand, when you remain silent with unshakable dignity, when you respect his space without abandoning yourself, you create the perfect ground for a conscious return. And even more importantly, you protect your energy, you heal yourself deeply, you grow spiritually, because you're not waiting for him to return to complete you. You are already whole in your own essence. And that state of completeness is what makes the reunion, if it happens, even more powerful and meaningful. You might be thinking, this is hard to do. And yes, it is. Our modern culture taught us to chase answers, to fix everything with urgency, to avoid existential emptiness at all costs. But Jung wisely shows us that the void is an essential part of the process of personal transformation. It is in the void that the seed of consciousness begins to sprout. It is in deep silence that the soul hears what the constant noise of the world won't allow us to perceive. So after intimacy, don't fall into panic. Use that precious time to truly care for yourself wholly. Do things that genuinely nourish you from within. Read a book that expands your awareness. Walk slowly through nature. Sip your coffee in contemplative silence while gazing at the infinite sky. Reconnect with soul friends. Reawaken your deepest dreams. Because in the meantime, something invisible but real is also happening within him. And that inner movement, although completely invisible from the outside, is slowly, carefully preparing the way back. Time is not your enemy, as we've been taught. Time is the fertile soil where consciousness grows and ripens. And when he does return, if he returns, he will be different, more present, more aware, and perhaps finally ready to meet you truly, without masks, without defenses. And it's important to remember with humility that not all men come back. And that's perfectly okay too, because the most important part of this entire process isn't whether he returns. It's who you become as you navigate the waiting with grace. Jung teaches that every relationship is a revealing mirror. And if that mirror breaks due to circumstances, the wisest thing you can do is to look at the shards with curiosity and learn from the reflection that still remains. What did this relationship show you about yourself? What parts of your being were illuminated? What old wounds were touched and brought to the surface? What personal shadows came into the light, ready to be integrated? All of this is precious material. Seeds of deep self-knowledge that no external circumstance can ever take away from you. So even if he doesn't return physically, you have gained something immensely valuable, yourself. You saw yourself clearly, accepted yourself with compassion, and moved forward with greater inner strength and wisdom. And this version of you, more conscious, more whole, more emotionally mature, will naturally attract people who are on the same level of evolution. Because true, lasting love cannot be built with someone who is still desperately running away from themselves. If he's not yet ready for that level of depth, let life prepare him at his own pace. You don't need to lose yourself trying to teach someone how to see you or value you. It is enough to authentically be who you are and continue walking your path with trust. Carl Jung deeply believed that kindred souls recognize each other, that when two people are truly ready for conscious love, the meeting happens almost magically. But that magic doesn't arise from desperation, paralyzing anxiety, or frantic urgency. It happens in pure truth. and truth lives silently in the peace of someone who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. So, after intimacy, if you want to do something truly transformational for your life, return to yourself with love. Take care of what you feel without judging it. Honor your openness without regret. And trust deeply. Trust what was awakened in that connection. Because if it was truly real, he will feel it in his soul. Maybe he'll fight it. Maybe it will take time for him to understand. But at some point, the call of the soul speaks louder than pride and fear. And when he returns, well, and many do return eventually, you'll know exactly what to do. Because you will have become someone who doesn't desperately need anyone, but who consciously chooses who deserves to stand beside her. And that, according to Jung, is the highest sign of emotional maturity in a human being. If this message resonated deeply with you, take a deep breath right now. Look within yourself with curiosity and ask, how many times have I forgotten myself just to keep someone close out of fear of abandonment? Now imagine clearly what your life would look like if you never again had to beg for love, attention, or respect from anyone. That is the gift Jung offers us, to have the extraordinary courage to be whole even when everything around us tries to push us into halves, into emotional dependency. This is a journey back home, to your own essence.